For today's video, I'm doing a centerboard repair, and that's going to require me to lift the boat off the trailer. So I do this all the time to wax underneath the bunks, to wax the hull where the bunks hit the hull. And normally what I do is I just put a 2x6 block at the stern end of the shoal draft keel and, use a hydraulic jack, lift the boat up, and then, there's just enough clearance to get my hands in there. But of course this time I'm going to need a little more room because I need the centerboard to drop down. And the centerboard, when the boat is on the trailer, is held by the trailer rollers. So what I'm going to try for this is I'm going to try tilting the nose of the trailer up and then jacking the stern to match it. And I'm hoping that with the trailer tilted a little bit, that'll give enough clearance for the centerboard to drop down. And the repair I'm doing is just on the leading edge tip. And so I don't need it to come down very far, but we'll see how it goes. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and lift up the nose of the trailer. And I'm not going to go crazy with it. I don't need it to be super high, but enough to let that centerboard drop down. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and put my strap back on so that the trailer can't tip backwards. Alright, so now that's secure. So as I bring the boat back up to level, this is where some of the weight of the bow is going to be, is right here on this roller. So while I'm doing the repair on the centerboard, since I've already got the MarineTex out and mixed, I'm also going to repair this little piece of the rudder and put a little MarineTex on there. Alright, so my first attempt did not go very well, and that's because the bunks are angled a little bit. So as I was lifting the boat and the block was moving up, it ended up getting hung up on the bunks, these bunks right here. So what I've done is I have cut my block down a little bit by a good almost 2 inches. And so I'm going to use now this narrower block. And one of the things you want to do is you want to make sure that the grain is going across, right? So because there's a void in the middle of the shoal draft keel and you're lifting from the center, with the pressure on the sides and then lifting from the center below it, you can crack it along the grain. And so you want to make sure that the grain is going across the shoal draft keel when you lift. So I'm hoping that this thinner block now is going to easily pass, which it will, it's going to easily pass through the bunks as the boat is coming up. Alright, so at this point I can see that there's light at the forward end of the bunks, so it's not, the boat isn't putting any weight on the forward end of the bunks, so all that weight is going on the bow. Alright, so I just went forward and checked all the straps, and so the trailer winch strap to the bow eye was still nice and tight, but what I found was that the strap that I have over the bow, even though it's at the very tip of the bow, it was getting really tight as the boat was lifting off the trailer because of course it's attached to the frame of the trailer. I should have thought of that. And so I've slacked that strap. I've left it on just so that way if the boat starts to roll backwards, it limits its movement. But I've went ahead and slacked that strap. So we're going to go ahead and keep lifting. check that again. Alright, I just checked the front straps again just to make sure that everything's still good. So the strap on the bow eye to the trailer winch is nice and tight, and then the bow strap still has some slack in it. So I can see the centerboard, and I'll go ahead and keep on lifting. So it was interesting, one thing I noticed, because I have this jack stand back here, is that as I'm taking the weight off the trailer is coming up. The suspension was compressed, of course, with all the weight on it. And so now that suspension is lifting up. All right, so now I'm gonna get under here and just see what the extent of damage is, see if it's just the part that I saw earlier on the front leading edge, or if it goes all the way around the tip of the centerboard. And so, you know, there is a margin of safety here, because if the hydraulic jack gave out, the boat would fall onto the trailer. I've actually put some blocks because the boat also tilts from side to side as you lift it. So it was leaning to the port side. So I put 2 wooden blocks underneath the bunks to keep the boat straight and level. All right, so I'm going to take a look and see what kind of damage is in there. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to check is the knot that actually ties the centerboard line. And the knot looks pretty good. So that's the knot that ties the centerboard control line to the centerboard. And so what I did is I used a little stick to kind of flip it forward so I could inspect it. And yeah, it looks fine. It's secure on there. So this is the area that I had concerns with, and I was concerned that it went all the way to the tip, but it pretty much is just a little bit here, and then mostly in that area that I could see before when I crawled underneath the boat. Alright, so the other thing that I found in my shoal draft keel is a small piece of Asian milfoil, which is one of those invasive species, and it's totally infesting my lake, but I certainly don't want to take it anywhere else. Now, of course, the boat's been out of the water for months now, so this is no longer dangerous and can't spread, but when it's alive, just a small piece of it that breaks off can actually infect the lake. Alright, so now I'm going to get on the boat and do a little prep work with the sanding block. So I finished the sanding, and now it's time to prep the surface with a little bit of acetone. And I've got my bay door open and my fan going, so I should be good. Alright, so I'm just mixing my MarineTex, and it's looking pretty good. So this is a 2-part epoxy, and it's kind of like wood repair putty. Alright, so I left the centerboard repair overnight to cure, so it's been about 36 hours. And I've lifted the boat now a second time, and I'm getting ready to go into there and start doing some sanding. Okay, so you can see I gooped on the MarineTex pretty thick, so this is what it looks like after curing for 36 hours. And let's see if I can get this focused. There we go. Alright, so this is what it looks like after sanding, and I'm very happy with it. There's a nice texture to it. The shape is much better. Got rid of all those rough gouges. And yeah, you know, the color
Doesn't quite match, but it sure does look a lot better. So yeah, very happy. Okay, so this has now been left to cure for about 36 hours. And you can see I put it on pretty thick. So I've got a little bit of sanding to do. So this is a pretty tight space. It's not the easiest thing to sand, that's for sure.
So this centerboard repair is the first time I've ever used the MarineTex two-part epoxy. It was actually mentioned in Tom Scott's book, The Trailer Sailor's Guide to the Precision 18, as a recommended product for doing any kind of hull or fiberglass repairs, especially below the waterline. So yeah, I think it worked great. You know, it sanded really well, it restored the shape of the centerboard, and then, you know, it adds a little bit of extra protection where the fiberglass and the gel coat had chipped out. So yeah, I'm really happy, and again, first time using it, but it turned out great. When you're lifting the boat off the trailer to do any work on the underside, there's a couple things to keep in mind. So one is you're lifting, you know, lift a little bit and then check, kind of get out, come out from underneath it and check all around the boat and just make sure that everything's going okay, right? Check the strap on the winch of the trailer to make sure that's not getting too tight or pulling the boat in the wrong direction. And just, you know, make sure that nothing weird is happening. So lift a little bit, do a check, lift a little bit. The other thing is, as the boat rises off the bunks, it's going to want to tilt one way or the other. And so you're going to have to put some bracing between the hull and the bunks to keep the boat level, because you don't want it to be tilting and then as you're raising it, tilting more and more. So you can use things like these foam pads. You can use your Type 4 flotation cushions. This last time I just used blocks of wood. So just keep in mind that you're going to have some kind of bracing. The other thing is, you know, safety, right? So you have to think about, you know, what happens if the winch gives out, right? So you might want to put some blocking or bracing underneath the keel. You know, once you've finished the lift and before you crawl underneath, you can put a jack stand, you can put wood blocks or timbers, just to help in case, you know, the hydraulic jack gives out. That way, you know, you still have a margin of safety. You also want to think about the trailer. So, you know, I have a strap on the front of my trailer to keep it from tilting back, but I still put a jack stand on the stern end underneath the trailer most of the time when the boat's in the garage, and especially if I'm lifting it off of the trailer. Just again, for an extra margin of safety. And then the other thing is that when you're done and you're starting to lower the boat, you have to remember to undo all this stuff, right? So you don't want to lower the boat back onto the trailer and then have the jack stand that's underneath the stern of the trailer wedged in there, because the trailer is going to rise a little bit as you lift. And same thing with whatever you put between the hull and the bunks. You know, as you're lowering the boat, you got to make sure you're taking those things out slowly. And so again, that's where that, you know, lower a little, do a check, lower a little, do a check. And that way you'll stay out of trouble.